I like you. So, I'll now in a rather masculine way hit the gavel. And Claire, we are in session from an executive session that we had, and the first order of business is the minutes of September 5th. Is there a motion?
I move the approval of the minutes of September 5th.
Go through it, page 1.
So under the approval of the minutes from the last time, I think we actually didn't make a correction because I think it was correct in there originally as Burmy.
Yeah, we did not.
So correct the corrections.
Page 2. Page 3. Hearing no further corrections, all those in favor of accepting the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is public comment. This is a moment for anybody in attending or anybody on attending remotely to speak. It's pretty much on any issue. We do have an agenda, and so if there is an issue that is going to come up later, you may choose to speak at that time. Although legally, you don't have to. You can speak now if you want, and you can speak about anything you want. Is there anybody who wishes to make a public comment? Okay, seeing nobody. Eric, is there anybody online?
Nope, no one online.
Next on the agenda, Class 1 reclassification pilot study. Matt and Bruce, are you going to be presenting, or is it?
I'm going to be introducing.
Okay.
Come if you want. Thanks for having us tonight to talk about this. I've provided the board with a very brief memo, just sort of providing a little bit of context for the presentation you're going to hear from the CCRPC and consultant team tonight about Class 1 highways. This is a follow-up activity from the Taft Corners project in some regards, because one of the things the Taft Corners vision talked about was the potential evolution of the state highways in the Taft Corners area. Those roads, as you experience them today, are primarily designed to move vehicles, and they are certainly by no means the kind of streets you might find in a city center or a town center or even a village center. Class 1 town highway is a process in Vermont by which communities can take over responsibility and greater design control over state highways in certain areas. And the pilot study you'll be hearing about tonight looks at that for different Vermont communities, but using Williston and particularly Route 2 as an example. So as I say in my memo, this is a follow-up from the form-based code. It's something Williston was willing to participate in because it would give us some additional answers about the path forward in Taft Corners, and particularly some price tags. I think, as I said at the time, some of the decisions about Taft Corners and Williston come with price tags. There's no action requested by the staff to the select board tonight. It would be good for the consultant team to get any feedback from the board that could go into the final report that the presentation is about. I would expect further conversations about transportation infrastructure, particularly in Taft Corners and related to Class 1, to come up in the transportation section of the town plan that we'll all be writing together over the next 18 months or so. That's all. I'm going to leave you with that and let the team take it away.
I think Sai went to
Yeah.
Sai's all set.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sai Sarapalli, Senior Transportation Planning Engineer at Children County Regional Planning Commission. So this project, as Matt explained, it was actually a regional study. The VTrans expressed interest in evaluating and investigating reclassification of state highways to Class 1 and understand and investigate what are the opportunities and challenges in reclassifying state highways, because there are studies in other areas in other municipalities as well. For example, I worked on Route 116 through Heinsberg. So they also looked at converting, like reclassifying state highway to class 1. So there was other study done like in the past. So for Williston, so we approached Williston and we asked if they are interested in participating in this study, because there are a couple of projects coming online from the state. One is the US2 corridor study, and the other is the US Route 2 slab removal project. So we thought that this would be a good opportunity to investigate and maybe conduct like a case study using this segment. So that's how we started this project and the study, and we hired VHB to investigate the opportunities and also challenges, and then transferring responsibilities. So what are all the things that are involved in this, and also come up with a cost estimate for 1 mile segment through the traffic corners along Route US2. So yeah, with that, I will hand over to Dave. Yeah, I'll take questions later, I guess. Yeah.
David Saladino with VHB, a transportation planner, also a resident of Williston. Let's see, do we have the slide?
Oh, I can get those up for you.
I know we have a relatively limited window here on the agenda, so I'm going to try to go through the slides fairly quickly so we can maximize the amount of input and conversation afterwards. And just to reiterate, I think it's been mentioned twice, but I'm not looking for any action tonight. Ideally, we're looking for kind of two buckets of comments, one specific to Route 2 in Williston. We'll talk about, does that seem appealing? Is it? If not, why not? But then also thinking more statewide. This is a pilot study. Other communities will be utilizing this report for some guidance if they're considering a class 1. And so be looking for how a select board considers, this kinds of questions, what things are important to you as the legislative body of a community.
There we go.
Okay. So we'll just jump right in. I think we'll go through the project overview. We'll skip that. We've pretty much covered that. The Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. We're looking both locally in Williston and then kind of generally statewide at the Class 1 Town Highway transition. Project schedule here, we started at the beginning of the year in January, moved through the steps that are shown in the schedule. We're here tonight. We've got essentially a draft report, and I'm looking to integrate any feedback or conversation from tonight and then into the final report. So the area that we're looking at, hopefully you can see, hopefully those at home can see, the blue line here is the section of Route 2 that we're looking at. And so on the right-hand side, we go from the fire department, fire station, west to Goodwill, or the entrance to Blair Park. So it's a little bit over a mile, about 1.07 miles. You can see on here where the traffic signals are. If you look at the bottom, you can see kind of average traffic volume. So we're right about 10,000 cars per day through this section of Route 2. And then just a couple other facts about the corridor itself. I mentioned 1 mile. The right-of-way width, so the width of roadway that the state owns varies from the narrowest, which is 4 rods or 66 feet, up to 132 feet. As anyone who's driven it knows, the pavement width widens, as you get closer to 2A, and then narrows back, so it's between 30 and 56 feet. We've got 2 to 4 lanes. We've got a number of traffic signals and one unsignalized intersection. About 10,000 cars per day, 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's a designated high crash intersection, so Route 2 and 2A, maybe not surprisingly, just given all the movements there, that is a designated high crash location. And at least 70 small culverts. You wouldn't guess it driving over it, but there is quite a bit of infrastructure under the roadway as well.
Just a typo, but I think Talcott is signaled. It says unsignaled.
The eastern Talcott.
Ah, okay.
The other end of the horseshoe. So Matt mentioned form-based code. I know you are all very familiar with that, but those who aren't, on the left-hand side is the street typology map. So this shows the types of roadways that the form-based code is looking to encourage within the growth center. Highlighted kind of the box there around Route 2, that same section. You can see it's a light green roadway type. And so on the right-hand side shows what that cross-section would look like Obviously, the upper half is the existing roadway that's looking west towards the new hotel. And then on the below it is superimposed on that what the form-based code cross-section would look like in that area. So quite a departure. Right above, it's more of a suburban, arterial roadway. Down below, we've got on-street parking, we've got sidewalks on both sides, street trees, bike lanes, and so forth. So fairly big departure from what's out there now, but that is what the form-based code street typology calls for in Route 2. So then looking at what the form-based code is recommending for Route 2, there's several things that cannot be implemented as long as it's a state-owned roadway. So a couple things that are noted here, things like curbed bump outs, which we see in number 1, any on-street parking, number 2, an 11-foot lane, so narrower lanes at those bulb outs, so going down to 11 feet, which is what the form-based code calls out for. That's not allowed. And then something as simple as street trees is highly discouraged within state rights of way. So all of those things are not allowed today. If the town wanted to get any of those on Route 2, be hard pressed to convince V-Trans to do those.
When I look at this here, 10,000 vehicles a day, what does Williston Road from, say, the Airport Parkway to Dorset Street, what does that approximate 1 mile stretch have per day?
Dorset Street, it's about 15 to 20,000. East of the airport, it's about 10,000, and you get up to about 20 as you get close to exit 14.
From the Burlington town line, about Huntingburg Road, Dorset Street, really, at one point was the busiest stretch of highway in the state of Vermont.
Do we have any other comparisons of highways of 10,000 vehicles per day that have parallel parking on both sides of the road?
We've got a couple examples. We'll go a couple slides ahead. I'll show you. One that comes to mind is Woodstock, downtown Woodstock. That's on Route 4. That's, I think, 12,000 cars a day. Very much that is a Class 1 town highway. It's also, U.S. Route 4.
Okay, thank you.
I won't go through all of this in detail. This just shows what the difference is between a state-maintained highway and a Class 1 town highway. On the left-hand side are the X's designate who's responsible for various maintenance responsibilities, so traffic signal maintenance, streetlights, and so forth. Under state highway jurisdiction, you can see that most of the X's are under the V-Trans column, with Bruce and his team responsible for just a few things that are noted there on the left-hand side. If they were to transition to a Class 1 town highway, most of those X's then move under the town column, with really the V-Trans maintaining just striping of the center lines to the 2 yellow lines, and then major resurfacing every 7 to 10 years. So other than that, it's really everything, all of the maintenance responsibilities move on to the town under Class 1 designation. This we can go through pretty quickly. I think one, to the extent that you can see on the right-hand side, it's very small, but those red squiggles are all the Class 1 town highways in the state. It is a bit hard to see. We did look at just population looking at population and miles of Class 1 town highway. So Williston is the 11th largest community in Vermont, just under 10,000 people as of the last census. And you can see 0 miles of Class 1. You can see the other communities around it with some with, some without Class 1 town highways. The next one, it just looks at it a slightly different way. It looks at the ratio of municipal property valuation to population, looking at property value per person, roughly. In that metric, Williston is number 2, right behind Shelburne in the state. And you can see both Shelburne and Williston neither have any miles of Class 1 town highway. I guess I would just note on the right-hand side there, that is median household income. Darker blue is higher income, lighter shades are lower. And you can see the red squiggles kind of across all median income levels. So it's not really just the Chittenden County wealthy communities. It is really all across the state. And here are some examples, as you're just referring to. We've got just a few here. This is Main Street in St. Albans City. Folks are probably familiar with that. Route 15, Pearl Street in Essex Junction. Route 2, Wilson Road, not necessarily the best picture here, but that is also Class 1. And Route 100 in Stowe. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess, and Woodstock as well. Woodstock is not on here, but similarly, Route 100 through Stowe has about 10,000 cars as well.
Huh. Seems like we have a lot more.
It's about the same traffic volumes. Just to get into some numbers here, we did put together the cost estimates of shifting from kind of going from that left side state maintenance to class 1 town highway, specifically here in Williston. Again, we're also looking at this generically statewide to see what implications are. But for Williston specifically, we did look at some cost estimates for each of those additional maintenance responsibilities that would be transitioned to the town. We used some information, really helpful information from Bruce. We got some from VTrans District 5 and VTrans average bid pricing. Adding up all of those costs, you can see here about $24,000 per year additional cost. Again, this is a ballpark. That's where we landed in terms of additional maintenance costs if this transition were to happen and the town were to take over the roadway. You can see it's about $23,000 of maintenance costs and then about $1,000 of unmet municipal labor. Obviously, you can't hire a tenth of a person, and so that gets a little bit dicey, in terms of how you actually cost that out. But that's it's a portion of a person, an FTE that would be needed for those additional services. Just to note there, that is the $24,000 per year is about 1% increase, 1.4% increase in the DPW budget, which is 1.7 million this year. All right, home stretch here. These are the last two slides here. Really just wanted, this is kind of more generally, well, I guess specific and general. These are some of the recommendations that we've come up with through talking to different stakeholders, VTrans, the CCRPC, a number of different communities that have class 1 town highways. And I'm just curious, from Williston's perspective, which of these kind of resonates, if any, in terms of enticing a community to take over a state highway. So the first two are really sharing, increased shared maintenance responsibilities. The things we heard most frequently talking to public works directors around the state is that traffic signal contractors and pavement marking contractors are really hard to find. There's one or two in the entire state. Really hard to get competitive bid pricing, hard to get their attention, to get them out here. And so VTrans has kind of the ability to do bulk order, procure them at a statewide level. And so VTrans can hold on to those two pieces, which happen to be very expensive maintenance responsibilities that would cut the costs, and I'll show how that affects the costs going forward. So those are ways to kind of keep some of the maintenance responsibilities on VTrans's on their docket. And then the next ones are more in terms of incentive. What can VTrans do to incentivize this reclassification? First one here, and I apologize for the language being a little bit small. The first one would be to transfer the roadway in a state of good repair. And so that would mean going through and making sure that the roadway surface is in good condition, all the culverts are in good shape, all the traffic signals are in good shape. Basically making sure any kind of deferred maintenance is completed before transitioning or transferring over the ownership. The second one is the lump sum payment. So VTrans would provide that lump sum payment to compensate for bringing that roadway up. So rather than actually fixing or resurfacing, fixing culverts, there's just a lump sum payment, and then the town can do as they want. Because it may be the case, just hypothetically, that a community would want to totally redo the roadway and make it, put on-street parking, put street trees in. Wouldn't make sense for VTrans to come through and repave the roadway if the town just wants to rip it up and do something different. So this would be providing a lump sum payment. Number 5 would be for VTrans to accelerate any programmed construction projects on the corridor. There's only one here on this section of Route 2, which is the Trader Lane traffic signal. So that would be, if VTrans were to agree to accelerate, move that signal forward, is that something that would be of interest to a community? And then just 2 more here. 3 more. Number 6 gets a little bit in the weeds, but there is a formula, a statewide formula based on per mileage of class 1, 2, and 3 highways. We're just focused on class 1. But right now it's a standard formula. If you've got a mile of roadway, you get $11,000 per mile. So it's a fixed cost depending on how many miles you have. There's an opportunity to adjust that formula, or the suggestion here, so that it takes into account some of the other things that are happening along the roadway. So if a road is in an urban area, it's got more maintenance costs than a section of roadway out in farmland. Would cost less to maintain. Right now, that is not getting taken into account. It's $11,000 per mile, regardless of where you are in the state. Number 7 is just adding more money into the coffer. So that $11,000 per year, is it possible to go up to $20,000 per year, $30,000 per mile? which would, in Williston's case, completely cover the costs of that additional maintenance. And then number 8 is is to basically re-look at the entire program itself, determine how many miles of roadway the state actually wants to maintain, and then work from there to see how they can move the rest of the roadway miles onto municipal roles. So that's a little bit bigger program, actually looking at the entire program itself. So those are the recommendations. I guess just one last slide here, just to show some of the costs. So under scenario 1 that we're showing, so 24,000 was roughly per year, the additional costs. Under scenario 1, where VTrans maintains the signals, that drops down to 16,000 per year. If VTrans maintains the striping, we're down to 14,000. If VTrans agrees to maintain both signals and striping, you can see the cost goes down by a third, so down to 7,000 per year. So those are just some potential scenarios, not anything we're necessarily recommending, but it's kind of where we are. Really curious thoughts on this. Is this at all interesting? Is this, you rather VTrans continue to maintain the road and just move on? If you put yourself in other communities, select board chairs, are there other things that you think would be enticing to a community that isn't on this list of recommendations?
Comments?
Well, I have to say, when I saw the 24,000, I thought it was 0 was missing, because I thought it would cost a whole lot more. I mean, that's the busiest, one of the top 10 busiest intersections in the state. I think Bruce would have somebody out there during a snowstorm plowing it every 15 minutes. It's not gonna be a one and done. So I was I think that's a very optimistic number. Unless Bruce has got people sitting around with nothing to do during snowstorms or something, but so I'm a little hesitant on the dollar value. It just seems too minimal to add such a huge and busy intersection. The other thing, just for the I did like that you addressed the stoplight of the maintaining the lights, because that was the first thing I thought of when I was reading this. Is like, we don't have anybody who does lights. How are we going to find someone to be full-time to repair 5 lights? I mean, that's silly. I think that would be a obvious, give that back to the state. So as I started peeling back the numbers, I started saying, so exactly why is the state so why are they so excited to get rid of this if it doesn't really cost anything? I mean, I guess they bring the plow up Route 2, they're going to lift it up when they get to the fire station and not plow until they put it down on the other side, and then go a little further, and they get to South Burlington, lift the plow up and go a little further and put it down. I mean, yeah, it seems doesn't make logical sense to me that the state would be so excited to get rid of the intersection if it really doesn't cost anything to maintain it. So.
Just to clarify, so it's more than just one intersection. It's about a mile. So there's several intersections.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I have to stop through all 7 stoplights every morning. So yeah, no, but it's really the main intersection is the one that you can't let the snow build up there. You'll have the fire department will be out there every 10 minutes. So
yeah.
I mean, the only other thing, and this would really be if it were to come back for a decision, I just can't quite visualize what we would do with it, because our town that section of Route 2 doesn't look a lot like these pictures, or at least it doesn't look like the pictures that I would need to be able to envision. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to put trees on this side. We'll put parking on this side. I'd need to have something to know what I'm getting for what I think is probably closer to $50,000 of expense at the end of the day.
Other questions or comments?
Things always cost a lot more than they look.
Yes.
I have a question, and it's a simple question, and I mean that in a pejorative sense about me. But why would the town want to do this? I mean, why would we want to take over a cost and the management and maintenance and expense and everything else of a highway that seems to be working just fine with the state doing it?
I guess one response, But the form-based code does envision some additional things along Route 2. It does have that in the code. So there is on-street parking, there are street trees, there's curb bump outs that are in the code, and so you can't really implement that without taking over the street. So that that would be one reason.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That was kind of my thing too, is like, I need to see what it, what it would look like, because we don't have buildings right up to the side in front of Shaw's, right?
Well, I think in the form-based code discussions, that was kind of one of the sticking points for us, though, was that, or in terms of walkability, was that intersection 2 and 2A, that's a big intersection. It's hard to, if we're going to make, the one area walkable and then the other area walkable, you still have to cross those intersections. And so I think this is essentially could potentially address that if we wanted to make those streetways more walkable to connect to each other. This is how we'd have to do it, is my understanding. Yeah.
I just wanted to add two more things to what David said about why would the town want to do something like this. One is when we're dealing with somebody who's building on existing right-of-way or building a street in the form-based code area that would be under the town's control, we're prescribing very heavily what that street section in front of that new building and site would be like. And it does include all of those amenities that cannot happen in a state highway right-of-way, but for Class 1. The other thing is that the overall official map and street layout map for Taft Corners envisions a grid of streets that intersect with, by necessity, the state highways. Without town control over access to those state highways, we've received pretty firm feedback from V-Trans that those streets cannot be built as sort of normal intersections with those state highways. You get a lot of right-in, right-outs, like Bishop Avenue or a few others you might remember. And that makes it a little harder to have things like signalized crossings of the state highways and get to that sort of granularity and walkability. So these are long-range goals. We did anticipate in the development of the zoning code that we would have to deal with structures and sites being developed fronting on state highways that were not under Class 1, that were under control of V-Trans as they are today. We do have provisions that give us the flexibility to approve buildings that way and to push some of that sidewalk and street tree infrastructure into the private land. Because we still want the sidewalk in front of the building, even if somebody cannot put it in the V-Trans right away. We still want the trees in front of the building. But over time, if we build out that way, buildings across those state highways from one another will be further apart. The pedestrian infrastructure will be further apart. The trees won't be close enough to shade the road. So all of those other sort of walkability, livability things get harder to do. Certainly, we wouldn't have street parking. Street parking both reduces demand for creating parking on site and tends to calm traffic because it creates this rough surface at your edge when you're driving down the road that otherwise you don't have. So a bunch of things. I referred to the Taft Corners vision document in my opening statement tonight. You can go back and kind of look at the pictures of what was talked about there in a very conceptual way. That's why the town might consider this at some point. But it's really important to me that anytime you're considering that, you have an understanding of cost. This is a great step forward in doing that. So that's all I want to say.
I do like having the option of having letting a town decide we'd fix the road and we'll take it over, or give us the money and we'll fix the road the way we want to. I think that's good forward thinking.
We have that right now.
Yeah.
You could take it today as a town, Class 1 town highway.
Oh,
Class 1 town highway is not a
it's not a what? New program.
new program.
Yeah, right. No, but I just meant the incentive, having a choice in the incentive, I think, because it could be different. If the town has no real plan, they just want to put some trees.
All I'm trying to say is that you,
Yes.
regardless of what happens here today, for some reason the select board decided they want to close the road, the Class 1 town highway, you could approach the state and do that,
Got it. Right.
regardless of whatever comes out of this stuff.
Okay.
Just makes me nervous, parallel parking on Route 2 on a busy rush hour.
Never spent a lot of
Chapin, you had a,
Chapin Cainard, I'm on the planning commission, and I wanted to just mention, in case it isn't obvious, that this study was for Route 2. Route 2A has the same situation. And for other reasons, I have a lot of interest in this for the village, because the traffic calming that could happen from having street trees next to the road and having parking and a curb would significantly calm traffic through the village. You probably also want a left turn lane at the school and so forth, but so to me, there's three things that are interested. And are you able to bring up slide 5 of Dave's presentation? Because when you were talking, Jean, about visualizing, if right now there's no curbs, there's no trees, and things are way back away from the road. So the lower part there is the specification in the Taft Corners form-based code for those roads. But in the and just something that's similar but without the parking, if you were to go and turn left on Kennedy Drive when you get to the airport road, that section of Kennedy Drive until you get to Route 116 Heinsberg Road is 4 lanes with a curb and with pedestrian facilities beside it, is a little bit in this direction. And instead of having bump outs, which I think might be on the next slide, to get pedestrians to be able to cross more meaningfully, another option that we discussed, and I think would come back up if we get into this discussion, is having what we were calling a boulevard. If you picture Dorset Street from Trader Lane down to the high school, it has that center median that can have trees in it and left turn lanes. And it has a feeling of being much closer, and pedestrians can cross just 2 lanes of traffic in one direction and then they get to the median. And so there are other options besides that. It doesn't have to be that exactly. I just wanted to make that point.
great,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you, Chapin. Thank you for the examples.
Anything further from the board? No? Okay. I hope we gave you a little bit
It's
of
been great. Yeah.
feedback.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I ask everybody a lot of questions, so don't worry.
I'm going to be taking the planning commission next door to their meeting now. They're not leaving. A bunch of us are going to get up and go to start.
Thanks. So, next, sidewalk winter maintenance policy amendment.
Yep,
Bruce,
so
are you gonna
I
be-
can give an overview for the
Okay.
board. So last winter, the select board allocated ARPA funds to purchase a second sidewalk plow, budget a new position in the DPW budget that will be, among other tasks, operating that plow this coming winter. This creates, our current select board policy outlines a procedure for residents to request segments of public sidewalk or multi-use path be added to that policy each December, for the select board to consider providing services the following winter, so you can budget any increased expenses accordingly. Given this change with the second plow and the approach decided last winter, looking at this policy will need to be changed because these measures will no longer be necessary. I consulted with the town attorney on this. Staff suggestion with the town attorney is for the select board to consider rescinding this policy. There are service standards outlined in the policy. We've included those in our Department of Public Works operational procedure for snow and ice removal. This is something that Bruce, as Public Works Director, updates every year. And I review it with him in my role as road commissioner under my duties. And this is shared with the community so that they understand the service standards that are out there. So Bruce here this evening, if the board has any questions about that operational procedure and on your agenda to consider whether you want to rescind this sidewalk policy.
Thank you. Bruce, anything to add?
No, I mean, that's the biggest thing is what Eric just said. You have to get rid of the policy since we don't really need it anymore. And it's been wrapped into the winter operations plan that we have right now anyway.
Questions or comments from the board?
Really quick, I just to technical clarification, it says something like all sidewalks, and then I know this is not all the sidewalks. So what's the difference between the sidewalks that we plow now and like something going through a neighborhood or?
Right now, we don't do neighborhood sidewalks hardly at all.
Right.
So this is going to be doing all the neighborhoods, all the public sidewalks, Brennanwood, South Ridge. Any place where there's public sidewalks. The way we've been doing it is mostly the sidewalks that have been being done are ones that make connections or would, like around the schools, those kind of things. So we've only done in the past about 15 miles of sidewalk. But now that's with the second machine, we're hoping that we'll get we'll get them all, it's just a matter of how long it'll take, the public sidewalks.
You realize I just moved to a house that doesn't have a sidewalk in front of it for the first time in
You should
25
call
years.
us.
I was amazed when I saw 62 miles of sidewalk.
Yeah, we have quite a bit. It's going, in a way, it's going to actually be, obviously, it's more work, and that's why we got the second sidewalk machine. But in the long run, it's going to bring us more in line with what the communities around us are doing, which they just plow all the sidewalks. They don't have a policy that says this new sidewalk's been built, people move in. The Hamlet, as an example, been asking us for years to plow their sidewalks, and the answer has been no. It's a neighborhood sidewalk, doesn't make a connection to a bike, to a school, or any of those kind of things. So that's going to do away with all this. South Ridge, a lot of 4-foot wide sidewalks. So that was always a consideration, and we weren't doing them anyway because it was mostly in a neighborhood. So we were just doing the ones, like I said, that connected to like the bike path to get you to the bike path, the rec path, whatever you want to call it, or the whole thing around the village here we always did because of the schools and stuff over around Allenbrook School we've done a lot of. So it's going to be easier on our part in that, being a little selfish, I'm not going to have people calling up and crying and yelling at me that we're not plowing our sidewalks. The answer to that's going to be, if it's a private sidewalk, we're not plowing. If it's a public sidewalk, we're plowing it. So right now, we're still down a person. It's going to make it a little bit more challenging. Hopefully, we won't be going into winter, but we'll get to them. It just may take a little bit more time, that's all.
So a public sidewalk is a sidewalk that's on a public road? Is
That's
that way
correct.
I think about it? Okay.
Anything the town has accepted. So private road, things like that are not. Quite honestly, over in front of, on Williston Road, not on Williston Road, 2A in front of J.L. Davis's properties that come up toward Route 2A, those are all private sidewalks. They're not in the town's right of way. We've never taken those over. They take care of them now anyway, but that's just an example. We'll come up to Wright Avenue, basically, almost all the way to Bishop, but then we won't be doing in front of they're stores right now because they're just not our sidewalks. So that property owner will still be responsible for clearing those. So that's just an example of. But if it's a public right of way, which remember, and we just heard, Williston Road and Route 2A are not town of Williston roads. Although we do have some sidewalk and rec paths along it that are ours. So,
Other questions or concerns? If not, there is a proposed motion.
My only thought was, did you think about just, I don't know if there's a way to suspend it or just do something rather than get rid of it, just in case this turns out to be, with the new developments and everything else, all of a sudden you're coming back and having to ask for another person to drive plows or a new plow. How would you go back if you found out that this wasn't really as doable as you thought?
I tried to make that clear when we were given the second sidewalk machine, that any new sidewalks that come in, we're going to be looking at another person and another piece of equipment, because we can only expend them out so far. So just because we just got that second one was just to take care of what we have now, not new stuff that's going to come online. But you're going to hear that in my budget proposals anyway, that you're going to be looking at a new truck and a new truck and another person in another 2 or 3 years. We got 3 miles worth of road out there that are gonna be getting built in the next, that's already stuff that's approved. So those are just the kind of decisions and things you're gonna have to talk about, whether you go back to saying, doing a policy like this. It wouldn't be my recommendation, but once again, it's truly, if we want to tell people that we're encouraging walking and all that kind of stuff, then how can we say in the wintertime, well, guess what? You can't walk there. We're not gonna plow the sidewalk. So
Yep.
that's all.
Being a select board policy, it's at your discretion. You know, if you were to decide to rescind it this evening, you can bring it back for readoption consideration in the future as well. Reviewing it with the town attorney, the sections that had to do with standards of care in the roadway, the suggestion was to certainly move that to a operational procedure as and that should be something that staff oversees as opposed to the board in a board policy.
So
Yeah, I was happy to see
because it's not an ordinance, we could take quick action if we need to.
It's just, there's a difference between like, well, we think now with the equipment and people we have, we can do all the sidewalks, so let's do that. That's different than we're committing the town to doing all the sidewalks for the rest of the future eternity.
Doesn't that go, and I'm just trying to think out loud, doesn't that go along with when we accept new roads, we're saying we're gonna plow those roads? And we're doing it with the same equipment we have and the same people, but at some point, we've reached our limits. We've got to go for more people and more equipment.
Yeah.
But we don't go back and say, well, we're not gonna plow those roads now. So, I mean, it's just food for thought. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Either we're doing it or we're not. And we're gonna need people and equipment one way or the other. So,
I think part of our goals and part of the reason we wanted the other plow and the other position too was for the, again, back to the walkability issue, but to walkabilities and to further our town energy goals in terms of, you know, more pedestrian traffic year round and those kinds of things. And so it, you know, this holds us a little bit to be accountable for that going forward and to looking for, you know, budgeting processes that, you know, with that in mind, that, you know, we may need to add additional plows or whatever to continue our energy goals and to continue in this vision. So.
and one of the other reasons that you guys were nice enough to provide that second machine was when you have one machine, it breaks down, you're done. I don't care how many miles of sidewalk you have.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just to even have a backup would obviously slow us down considerably, but we could get through it at some time limit, unless God helped us out with it and started melting it all before we get there.
So there is a proposed motion.
I'll move to rescind the sidewalk winter maintenance policy as adopted by the select board on May 18th, 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Housing Committee interviews. Got a lot of people.
Hope you have a plan for this, Ted.
I literally just my thought. I wonder what he's got planned.
I don't have anything. So I would ask the board what your preferences are. I think, you know, one possibility is that we have all 10 people up. Are there actually 10 or is it 9?
Yep, we have Bruce Fuller
on-
is joining us on.
Okay. Or we just arbitrarily take half and half. I will say that this is, you know, they're interviewing this many people we've never done before in one meeting. So it would be great if we could get this done tonight, but if not, we're already considerably behind. And I'm wondering if it might make sense to, you know, see how it goes and then maybe come back for another, ask people to invite them back for a second round. I don't want to do that, but if it comes to that. But so all at once or 5 and 5, just a consensus, and then I'll.
Well, we haven't really talked about a set question, so it's just going to be bringing somebody up and asking random questions of people?
Well, I don't know that I'd call them random. Questions at the discretion of the duly elected members.
5 and 5 works for me.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's have, if I could, I just wrote the names down as they appeared, but, Bruce Fuller, Charlie McGill, Debbie, Lisa Braden Harder, and Marla McQueston. Could you come up and bring extra chairs, and we'll have 5 of you at the table. We need 3 extra chairs. Nope. Yes.
We'll have
need-
Bruce on Zoom.
Sure, but we'll need that extra chair when the next 5 come. Planning ahead.
And Bruce, if you can hear me, I see you joined as a panelist. You just need to enable your camera and microphone.
Can you see me now?
Yep. Yep. Can you hear us okay, Bruce?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Got to read my text.
So, welcome. I think what I'd like to do starting off is, we do have the applications that were filled out by all of you. But if I could ask for a very brief 45 to 60 seconds of introduction, if you could state your name and a little bit about yourself and your interest in the committee. That might be a great way to get the ball rolling. So if we can do the people here first.
I'm Marla McQuestion. I'm Williston, and I'm interested in being on this committee because I'm part of a group of parents in Williston who have children with needs who are interested in living in Williston, looking for well-needed affordable housing. And our parents have been working on this, and we've also seen that there's most of us have regular kids who also came up. I read some of the form-based code and the assessment that we've done. There's a big need for affordable housing.
Great. Thank you. Debbie?
I'm Debbie Ingram. I am, a resident of Williston for 21 years now. I've served in many different capacities in public service, including on the Planning Commission, Select Board, as a state senator. I chaired 2 of the affordable housing task forces that Williston has had. I'm currently a justice of peace. And then during that time, I've also been the executive director of a nonprofit called Vermont Interfaith Action, which chooses to work on social justice issues by using a grassroots methodology of listening to everyday people. And all 16 years that I have been doing that job, affordable housing has been the #1 issue that people have picked, all across the state, really. I think that Vermont's housing crisis is real. I think that it's probably the biggest single problem that we have in the state, and it's a problem here in Williston. But I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to just complain about a problem. I like to contribute to solving it, and I think we have a lot of different options available to us to lower our housing costs and to really lead the way. I'm very bullish on Williston being a municipality that can lead the way for the rest of the state. And I envision a community in which we have mixed income housing. We attract a diverse group of people. We have character and walkability and all kinds of great things. And I think we can be the best town in the whole state.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, if I could ask, could you mute your microphone? I think we're getting feedback from you. Thanks. And we'll get to you in a second. Charlie?
I'm Charlie McGill. I've lived in Williston for about 47 years. For about 35 of that, I've been involved in low cost and very low cost owner occupied housing through Habitat for Humanity, where I'm still a board member. I have a very strong feeling that the way out of poverty for very poor people is through home ownership. And I'd like to see Williston find more ways to be involved in that. I've been involved in 2 committees that the town has had on working on low-cost housing, and I'd like to continue that work. I know I'm at a disadvantage because you all know me.
Lisa?
I'm Lisa Braden-Harder, and I've been in the town for about 5 years. I have a background in technology and grew a tech company to be very large very quickly and took it all the way to IPO. But more recently, I've been interested in this problem to pull people out of poverty. And also, I think I'm excited about this housing committee because it's building on the great work that you guys have already done, which is around changing some of the bylaws and starting that work. And then also the values around inclusion. So to build the kind of inclusive community that we've been talking about here, housing has to be addressed. So I'm very excited about that and the possibilities that Williston has around that.
Great, thank you. Bruce? Can we
Yeah,
answer?
Mike?
Yep, go ahead.
Sure. I'm a 48-year-old veteran. I raised my first family over on just off of Old Stage Road back in the 90s. I just recently moved back to Williston this last winter. I found myself in need. I've never utilized help from the state or whatnot. I ended up getting in touch with support services for veterans and families and Vets Inc. and ended up getting housing at Zephyr Place. I've been asking myself this question: how can I help enrich the experience of Williston for its visitors and the residents here? Because when I was younger and I raised my first family here, I wasn't thinking that way. I also was an inmate. I was the first inmate in Vermont's history to get accepted to Vermont Law School. I passed the bar in South Carolina in 2020, worked for a law firm, mostly working on family law and contract practice. And my need, or to be able to express my need, is to help those in your position understand not just the mentality of folks coming in, but there are many people that are just barely starting to scratch the surface of the problems. You know, there's a lot with the housing crunch here in Vermont. There's a lot more going on than just getting housing. It's being able to attain it and then maintain it once you get here. There's not a lot of services out there that are helping people retain, or the housing retention programs. There's not a lot of oversight with that. And I see a lot of problems that are just starting to bubble over with crime and increased break-ins and that kind of thing. And I'm hoping to be a voice to help, not guide, but maybe help instruct and show you what you're looking at in the future if you're doing things a certain way, because I've been on both sides of this table as a business owner and a homeowner here in town. And then also, you know, being a recipient of getting help. There's just a lot going on that folks aren't aware of. And I'm hoping to bring some of those things to light and start curbing some of those issues, the ever rising recidivism rate of, you know, Vermont prisons and mental health issues that go undiagnosed or untreated in this area. Unfortunately, Williston's starting to pay for it. So that, I guess that's where I'm at.
Great. Thank you. Questions from the board?
So I guess for all of you, and I'll ask the second group the same question, so you'll be at an advantage because you'll have the time to really think. But obviously the needs of housing are many and encompass a broad range of income levels and housing types, and this is not a short-term solution kind of situation. But so thinking of this as a brand new committee, what would you prioritize as kind of the first work of the committee? And we'll start maybe with Bruce, since he was the last to introduce himself, and work backwards from the way we. Is that okay? So Bruce Fuller, we'll start with you.
I don't know if I've got all the answers. I know I got a lot of questions, and I know that because I've got experiential knowledge, I bring a little bit more insight in some areas than others. Um, I think that my answer is going to be two-pronged. The addressing at least the folks, my neighbors in my neighborhood over here at Zephyr Place, there are a lot of folks here in a small area that are continuing to engage in activities that got them homeless in the first place or got them in trouble with the law or had them have to enlist the help of various nonprofits in the area just to be housed. And having a little bit more oversight and a little bit more accountability in that area, I think would be first. And secondly, um, addressing the ever rising crime issue that's starting to just, like I said, barely scratch the surface. And the reason why I say that is just firsthand knowledge of some of the visitors to this area that I've seen that I knew in my previous life. And it's alarming to see that people are hurting and continuing to hurt themselves and inviting that kind of stuff to these neighborhoods that I'm sure when you guys planned and approved Champlain Housing Trust to build here at this former hotel, I'm sure it wasn't in the forefront of your mind, you know, the clientele that would be enlisted to live here and the issues that come with that. And again, wanting to address those problems head on, I believe is what really spurred the action for me to apply in the first place.
Well, as others have said, there's many parts of this. I mean, I'm excited about the workforce housing issues as well and engaging with employers. One thing I do in Brattleboro is work with refugee housing down there. And of course, that's a very different town. They're very excited about refugees and because they need to grow their population, but they also have a lot of properties that they can reuse. But from that, you know, those partnerships that they pull together are like 15 different partners. So these kinds of projects bring in everyone. But I think it'd be great to engage business because our business leaders are absolutely feeling the pinch as well.
I told you in the first place that I see home ownership as being the avenue out of poverty. So I'd like to see changes in the permitting regulations in ways that encourage more home ownership in addition to the rental that seems to get equal weight today. So I think finding ways to change the regulations in ways that are more encouraging of home ownership is something that we ought to have at the forefront.
Well, I start with the data. Looking at what are the home prices, what are the median incomes in town, what are the rents, what are how much do you have to earn an hour to afford them. Looking at all the different housing, the different parts of town where we have housing, so that we have a common set of facts, so we actually know what we're dealing with. And then I would want us to look at what the options are. There are lots of great folks that we can use as resources, the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, the folks at the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, people, the Chittenden Housing Trust, Champlain Housing Trust, all the different folks who can tell us, what we could do with our housing trust fund that, that has been set up. What can we do to have denser housing focused in certain areas of town? What ordinances should we change? Should we decrease fees so that we can lower housing costs, building costs of housing? I'd like to go very methodically and base everything on the actual data and the choices that we could make to make the changes we want to see.
I guess I'm mostly concerned, I mean, with our parent group, we've been exploring a lot of community development block grants and the money that's available through the state and things like the community development block grant that the town would have to be applying for. We've sat in on a lot of the plans and meetings around form-based code and the assessment, so, you know, we'll be aware of what the situation is in Williston. I can see that there's a lot of need, and I can see that there's different avenues. I tend to be a team person, and I tend to come to my free, I have my group that I'm more interested in seeing something happen, but I realize that group is pretty representative of a lot of people that aren't even median income in Williston. People that work here that are way below median income, and we should have more of those people. Pretty much along this.
So I hope it's a short answer question. Last meeting, we decided to call a public hearing on proposed bylaws that would increase the opportunity for affordable housing. And question is, are you aware of that, and do you support it, and why? Debbie?
I have to say I haven't followed that very, very carefully. So, yeah, I certainly support anything that will get us further along the road for affordable housing. Yes.
This is an inclusionary zoning.
Oh, the inclusionary zoning. Well, you know, the experience in Burlington has been mostly positive, so I think we should definitely look at what they've experienced. And then they did make some changes recently, and we might want to consider those. So yeah, I do generally support inclusionary zoning.
Thank you, Charlie.
Well, I appreciated the fact that you put in a requirement for 15% of the housing being at or below the median income, and increasing it if they were at or below 80%, they wouldn't have to have as many houses. I've been concerned that at the median income, I would have a hard time considering affordable. I would have preferred it if you'd had 80 and 60 with those same numbers. But I thought that what you put in was a big step forward, and I appreciated it.
Lisa?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the work on the fees and the requirement for affordable housing and some potential funding for this fund that we're talking about, we're all looking for.
Bruce?
To be totally honest with you, I've been dealing the last few weeks with some family stuff, and I haven't been up much on what's going on specifically in the town. But I can tell you this, that what I do know is that being a new fella coming back into the city of Williston, or being a new person that's going to come to the city of Williston and going into affordable housing, or, you know, at cost housing, the last thing that they're thinking of, unfortunately, is if the city's going to need a second plow machine. And the only reason why I speak that way, and I don't mean any disrespect, is that the issues that folks are facing right now are much deeper than whether they can afford the rent or not. They're just looking to get off the street and have a comfortable, warm place, shelter at night. And, you know, for some of us that have utilized these programs, various programs, to get where we're at today, it took a lot of hard work to get here, but there hasn't been a lot of hard work to keep it. There's not a lot of people in my life now that are trying to keep me on track. It's all up to me. And by rights, it should be. But if I was teetering on the edge of, you know, drug use or alcoholism or various other things in folks' lives, I could be one of those guys throwing needles on the ground out here, and I wouldn't give a damn about a plow. My hope and my vision is to follow through and try to change the legacy for my kids, first of all. But secondly, you know, try to enrich the lives of other people that are coming here, and really trying to buckle down and get them focused and laser focused on what life has to offer here in town. So I apologize for not knowing or understanding what you're talking about. But again, I'm pretty passionate about what I'm trying to do with my life, and hopefully steer other folks to do the same at some point.
And Marla?
Well, I'm aware of the bylaws, and I do support them. steps that were made as part of changing from someone else. There were some steps that were made in the changing the bylaws that should improve and should attract some new development that would improve building of affordable housing. It seems like we've moved on some of the incentives that were set up 7 years ago or have not worked, so it's good that we've moved on.
Right. Other questions from the board? Okay, we thank our panel. And we'll invite the next people up. Michael, Monica, Scott, Todd, and Scott. So again, if you can please just state your name and very briefly, 45 seconds to 60 seconds, give a little bit of background about yourself and why you're interested in the committee.
My name is Scott Stevens. I moved to Williston about a year ago. I'm an engineer at Du Bois working on various water and wastewater projects. I had first-hand experience moving to Williston, just how challenging it is to find a place. Even as an engineer, it's challenging to meet the requirements to pay off the mortgage and keep up with the house and everything else. So I can only imagine how challenging it is for those who are much less fortunate than me. So that's a big reason why I'm here, to help with the advocate of it. Just a little bit of background about myself. I have a master's degree in environmental policy and management, a couple of undergrad degrees in civil engineering and biology, and also I'm a candidate for a master's in civil or environmental engineering. So, and also haircut.
You hide it well.
You're fine.
And also another big reason why is just to be more involved in the community, more civically involved. As I'm sure everybody relates to.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Hi, I'm Todd Cook, 31. I've been a resident of Williston basically my entire life. Software engineer. I've lived in Williston pretty much my entire life. I hopefully will live in Williston for basically the rest of my life, but Williston has a lot of problems, and a lot of them are due to car dependency. And I think a lot of these problems are addressable, and they may take time to address, but the changes are straightforward if we work together and update the laws that are trapping people in car dependency. So I hope to be a part of that change and make Williston a more walkable and livable place for everyone of all income levels.
Thank you.
Oh, sweet fine. It's always good. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Rogers. I live in Williston with my wife, who's a local veterinarian, and our 11-year-old son, who goes to Williston Central School. We've been in Williston for almost a year now. Really love it here. My background is generally local government. I currently work for a local municipality as a community development manager. I did my master's degree work mainly in housing at the University of Florida, where I engaged in the evaluation of the Jacksonville Housing Authority, and I did my master's policy work on the implementation of Section 8 housing vouchers in Jacksonville as well. Housing has always been a passion of mine. I believe it is right, and I believe is becoming more and more difficult for working class people to get a home and build wealth. I also work in my day job with the immigrant and refugee community, and they're having a very hard time right now. It really breaks your heart. So I want to make sure we have a world, that's equitable for them as well. Additionally, I served as secretary of the Alachua County Housing Finance Authority, where we issue bonds to develop and rehab new properties. I further I've lived in Eugene, Oregon for a time where I was I was co-chair of their housing trust fund, and we worked with city staff to build that committee up. And then I was also co-chair of the Eugene NAACP's housing committee, which I was asked to form by their executive director. But again, housing is a passion of mine, so that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Rivero. I'm a relative newbie, I guess, to Williston, living here 5 years, 10 years total in Vermont. I'll tell you a little bit about my, I guess, household composition, since it kind of, makes sense here. I live with my partner and his daughter, who is now back after college. So we're kind of a mixed household, and throw in a little bit of, mother-in-law often coming over. We experience all ages of different housing needs. For the kids' sake, it would be really great to have opportunities for younger people to be able to stay, live, and work in Williston, which is a great place to live. And I suppose you all know that, doing what you do. I am a neighbor to Sefer Place. I rent next to there, and I'm thrilled that Williston is offering those types of housing opportunities. In my day job, I work for a small nonprofit, helping people with criminal justice involvement, substance use disorder, experiencing being unhoused. I often visit the Elmwood Community Pods in Burlington. A little bit different, obviously, like experience in the city of Burlington than here, but nonetheless, like we're seeing growth here. And I would like to see it be, responsible, where everyone can have a healthy and safe place to live. If, two adults with as close to living wage as we can expect have a hard time renting in Williston, I can only imagine what it's like for people with a single income, or older people, or people who have health issues that are limiting their ability to make a living wage. So in general, I'm just here to hopefully be supportive of ideas that work to kind of form a safety net around those. It's kind of like what Bruce said, it's not just about getting housing, it's maintaining people in housing, and how the neighborhoods kind of develop in that way. So yeah, hoping for just connecting with the community a little bit.
Good evening, I'm Mike Lucy. Quick background: for several years I used to own a hostel in Burlington. So daily, people coming in, trying to get housing in the area, seeing that. So it's difficulty with that. Very much a resource for housing in the area, a lot. With COVID, I'm not doing a bit of a pivot. I'm in law school, studying land use stuff, anything housing adjacent, kind of why I went down that road. And yeah, I think affordable housing and housing in general, there's a lot of, like everyone said, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And a town can't pull all those levers, but can some. So I thought we were going to see what we could do. So okay.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
So same question. So obviously new committee, and with there being so many variables, what do you see as kind of the first priorities for this committee as we stand it up? We'll start with you. Yep.
So yeah, basically what I was saying, I think there's a lot of variables, and like we were just saying with the zoning and the state being in charge of the right of way, I'm not really sure what we can do from a town's point of view that isn't stepping on someone else's toes or like doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction on. So I guess first thing I want to do is say, what can we do? What are sort of our purview, and get a sense of what the options are first, just kind of categorize ideas, brainstorm essentially, and then go from there.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, not knowing, exactly the scope of what we're able to accomplish, without, kind of other jurisdiction, taking over. But, like we read in last, or maybe this week's Williston Observer, kind of, instead of incentivizing certain things, requiring them, obviously there's a fine line with scaring off builders that have a lot of capital to build. But in general, it seems as though there's a lot of money to be made, and I think that some of that should be reinvested into the community that's helping them be able to grow. So just kind of working off of that and hoping to, develop a relationship that benefits more people.
Yeah, having gone through this before in Eugene, Oregon, one of the first things that we did was, one, get to know each other as a committee. Beyond that, we established our own procedures of how we would vet and view things. We would bring in also speakers to come in and educate us on certain things. We met with Eugene's Planning Commission. We met with quite a few of the stakeholders in the area. CHT would be a big one we'd want to meet with out here. A big thing to make this run properly is all the work we're going to have to do to set up how the committee runs, and that really is a big thing before you really get into the what is sort of how are we going to approach it.
So the biggest thing I would look at for the committee is changing the zoning laws in Williston. Currently, I think it's illegal to build commercial buildings almost anywhere except like a very small Williston. So changing those laws to make it so you can build a dense multi-use being commercial, upper floors like Church Street downtown. Allow those to be built all over Williston so that people can walk to a small grocery store nearby them, or walk to a daycare, walk to their job. When you talk about walkability, it's not just sidewalks, it's proximity. You need to have things close by. If the grocery store is 5 miles away, that's not walkable, even if there's a sidewalk there. You need to have things close by. And I think that is a huge, probably the number one thing that the committee would need to tackle. I'm not sure how that would be done, but that is the number one thing that needs to be addressed.
Well, for me, the first thing that we should do is really define what the problem is, and what the needs are, before we move forward with any alternatives to address them. So that would be the first thing I do is define what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and then move forward from there. And people mention all sorts of great things, and pretty excited that a fellow consultant really numbers that they probably
Other questions?
My turn. This will be a surprise. Before I ask the question, Williston is very fortunate to have 10 qualified candidates here tonight. Be a tough decision to select just 9 out of the 10. But anyway, my question, you heard it before, is that weeks ago we called for a meeting of the town to talk about the new bylaws for essentially affordable housing and other housing in the town. And the question is, are you aware of it, and do you support it, and if so, why? And I'll start with Todd.
I'm not aware of that specifically. I am supportive of affordable housing, although it needs to be intelligent. It shouldn't be like a strict cutoff, like, oh, you've gotten a promotion at your job, then you make $40,000, now you're out. That's like a poverty trap for a lot of people. I think how they do it in Amsterdam, it's more like a tax. When you reach a certain more middle class wages, you get taxed more, so you're encouraged to lower the affordable housing so that people that are really struggling can move in. But what's, I think more important to focus on is that, affordable housing is plentiful housing. So, you know, if you say like, oh, 20% of all housing should be affordable, like, great, but if there's only like so much housing, then that's just not enough. There's a lot of people that need housing, so we need to focus on developing a lot of dense multi-use developments so that people have more places to live, more options. So that yes, there are like luxury options in Burlington if you want to see lake or whatever, but there's also options like studio apartments that are cheap because there's a lot of housing in the market, and if there's not enough, the supply is low, demand is high, the price is going to be high, so we have to increase the supply.
Scott?
Yes, I am aware of the bylaws. I've also, I read quite a bit of the local news, and of course, housing is passion, so I do follow this, and I do support inclusionary zoning. I think what's exciting for the town of Williston is that the town's taken a very proactive role in housing and has made these changes, and I think they're going to be for the better, which is exciting even for this committee here, is that we can watch and see how this is implemented over the next several years and what happens. And then following a period of data collection, we can then go back and evaluate how these new policies will work, which I suspect they will work quite well. I've seen them work in other communities, but at the end of the day, we'll have an option to evaluate and then maybe even propose different options as things grow. But you know, I think with form-based code, I think with the new bylaw changes, inclusionary zoning, I think Williston has put the right foot forward.
Thank you. Monica?
In theory, on paper, it's obviously like an appealing development for those of us looking for affordable, not just in the sense of having like a housing agency, like CHT run affordable housing like programs, but actual by, you know, ownership of real estate, like somebody was saying earlier, is kind of a lot of people's way out of poverty. But I think, and maybe I misread in another article or something, but some of what was being discussed was these new developments being capped at what they could be sold for. And so that to me is appealing in the sense that, sure, it might be a gateway out of poverty, but like a volatile real estate market, you know, can cause things like we saw when everybody moved to Vermont during COVID and raised the prices to double. So having some of those caps isn't going to be appealing to people looking to maybe have a, what do you call it, starter home or like flip a, you know. So yeah, I think it's something that we need to have in code so that it's not just one generation's wealth. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Michael?
So I'm not aware. I had my first kid a few weeks ago, so I'm not really
Have anything.
anywhere right now. Generally speaking, in theory, inclusionary zoning sounds good. I haven't looked at the details, as I said, about the quotas or incentives for affordable housing. I'm a little leery of those systems generally, not to say that they don't work, but I think that they're not the only thing that should be done, or they can't be kind of a crutch, kind of like identifying why they're needed in the first place, and hopefully eventually addressing those long-term goals. But again, I haven't looked at specific stuff.
Yes, Scott?
No, I think zoning definitely plays an integral, or should play, or pretty much has to play an integral role in the housing committee, just as it has such a huge impact on development and housing in general. As far as that specific inclusionary zoning, I did see the newspaper article. I haven't gotten around to read it yet. It's sitting on the couch, but I'll definitely something that needs to be strongly considered, because the zoning regulations, really not just housing, but business and the whole town in general, it plays a huge impact on Williston today, but also going forward in future generations as well. And these zoning regulations, they'll outlast all of us, or at least the impacts from the laws. Definitely something that's exciting to learn more about, just because of the impact that they make.
One question is, not sure how to ask it maybe, but how would you plan on increasing, or would you agree on increasing the building of low-income rental units in Williston? How do you feel about that? Start with you, Scott.
In general, yeah, I mean, I think that building a diverse community with different income levels, I think that's very important. I think we need them for our restaurants, for our stores, for the jobs that no one else wants to do. We need those people in Williston. So I think that in general, before hearing more specifics about it, certainly something that I strongly consider.
Yeah, more housing is always good. It needs to be, for it to be affordable, it needs to be plentiful again. The market, it's not going to be, if a lot of people are buying for the same space, it's not going to be affordable. So there needs to be enough of it. And it needs, I believe that all new development should be multi-use so that people aren't forced to buy a vehicle. They actually are able, they can get by by walking to go about their daily lives. That way they're not forced to buy a $30,000 expensive item that will only lose value over time. They can get by with the other necessities of life. So yes.
I strongly support the creation of low-income housing in Williston. I think it's a matter of fairness, and I think it benefits our community as well, even beyond people able to get jobs here. I think having a diverse group of people living in Williston is good for us. What I would say on that is the best way to do that is not to concentrate low income in one area. You want to disperse. You want people of different financial backgrounds living and working together and going to school together. So, for me, if I'm on this committee, I'm going to advocate for low income housing, and I'm going to advocate for low income housing in a way that is dispersed through the community and built at a high enough level that people don't even realize it's low income housing. Thank you.
I absolutely support development of more affordable, low-income housing. Kind of also like you said, not concentrating it. When somebody gets a housing choice voucher, they can go to any landlord, and by law they cannot outright say they won't accept it, but many will find other reasons not to. I work sometimes in Burlington trying to find people who have vouchers from Burlington Housing Authority or Vermont State Housing Authority. And landlords are turning down money from the federal government because they can charge double that, and then they don't have to have the repairs needed to get it to be to the standard of the housing authority. So obviously, these are some things that are beyond our control of what we can fix right now. But, we've seen a lot of hotel buildings turn into affordable housing, like Zephyr Place. And now we're seeing in South Burlington, the Brayburn is going to be opening up at the end of this month. So maybe, I'm not saying we don't need hotels. The studies, the data show that we do and that they will be utilized. I live across the street from one. It's always busy. And so in that regard, maybe turning some existing housing situations that aren't maybe built out that way. I read St. Michael's College is going to be using some old dorm buildings and developing those into housing specifically for currently unhoused people. So I guess, to say it bluntly, once you're unhoused, it's super hard to get back into housing. Nobody wants to rent with you, even if you're throwing money at them. Kind of incentivizing landlords that have existing properties to work with folks who need housing and keep them there, in addition to building specific sites, you know, like building specific opportunities for people to be housed. You know, I never understood kind of the thinking of some neighbors, not just Williston, of affordable housing being kind of like an eyesore, like taking away value from their properties. And it's kind of like all those people have to exist somewhere. If not, if they're going to be outside, how is that better? So kind of just facing the fact that we can preemptively, you know, deal with a homeless, you know, situation that we're seeing. I think, you know, in the last 5 years, 30% increase in homelessness in the nation. So, you know, if working in Burlington has shown me that, you know, there's not a silver bullet to any of this. And so attacking it with all the tools that we have would be the best way to do it. So more affordable housing, more options for smaller unit housing, mixed use, all of that can't hurt.
Thank you.
So I'm again sort of concerned about creating things that are designated as low income or that are designated as affordable, just because it complicates the system and adds downstream issues. For example, my hostel was in Burlington, hotel rooms, Burlington, probably all know, hundreds of dollars a night. But we were able to charge $40 a night because instead of offering a hotel room, we offered a bunk and a bunk bed and a dorm room. And that works for a lot of people, and it's able to let them have somewhere to stay. That's affordable. For many years, I lived in Burlington and had a 300 square foot studio. That was great. It's the only way I could really afford to be there. So again, sort of instead of finding a way to build affordable housing, trying to find a way to like rethink how we're doing things to just make housing that's affordable. And if that's, I mean, a lot of times with zoning and codes and wastewater stuff, again, you can't touch everything, but sometimes we sort of like regulate our way out of affordability and looking at some ways that we could scale back those assumptions and see what else we could do. But obviously that's a long process and difficult. Sometimes, yeah, just saying this is what we need for now or something is what you got to do in the meantime.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you to panel number 2. We're going to move on to other items on the agenda, though we do expect to take up a vote tonight. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to not stay. It's whatever you suits your fancy.
Thank you all very
Yeah.
much for, I will say, when I saw that there were so many of you who had applied and that it made me very happy and very hopeful for our community, that so many people were invested at this level in making these changes. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Great backgrounds.
Next item, town manager contract extension. The proposed contract was sent out by email earlier this week. And I think Eric, you can comment on it if you want, but I think I'd just say the select board is asked to consider an extension of the town manager's contract. The draft extension has been shared with the select board. There was also a copy of the old contract just for comparison purposes. It was also sent along. This is an issue that we discussed in executive session previously, but we're in public session now, so feel free to make comments, questions, suggestions, or God forbid a motion. So, folks?
There's no questions. I'd move to approve a contract extension with town manager Eric Wells and authorize select board chair Ted Kenny to sign the extension on the select board's behalf.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Thanks to the board, and just want to say it's been a pleasure to serve the community these 3 years that flew by. And, looking forward to the work ahead with the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Appointments. Consider appointments to the Housing Committee. The select board may appoint 7 to 9 members of the committee. We have 10 candidates. And so, and then I have no formal way of proceeding here, but.
Can I just ask, is there any opinions on the board? Should we appoint 9 or should we, because I was just reading over, we don't have the breadth that we had hoped for in the committee, so it's pretty good, but do we want to appoint 9 and leave one person off? Do we want to appoint 8, hoping that we could recruit somebody who doesn't, who meets the sort of missing pieces? I haven't made up my own mind. I'm just looking for what people are thinking.
I think one of the things we had, talked about certainly was, as you said, getting a wide range of people who are representative of all various housing needs, and possibly also with community partners as well. And so I think that's the one piece that there are some folks who do represent community agencies and things like that, or not represent because obviously they're here on a personal level, but who do work for different community agencies and partners. But there's nobody kind of who's specifically, as a designee of that. And so that would be the one thing that maybe would be missing, that we might want to round out the committee with.
We are missing a developer or a builder. We did not check all the, as Gene said, we did not check all the boxes. This is for a 3-year term, correct?
Well, yes, but
Maybe staggered.
yeah, we'll stagger them. So some of them will technically be 1 year and then renew in a year.
So developer is a person that you mentioned. Gene, what kind of category would you be looking for? And Greta, you said somebody who actually represents, is acting as a representative of community organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you see there's the criteria membership, 1 representative from the planning commission, which we don't have.
Don't have.
1 member from a housing nonprofit organization, which is kind of what I'm indicating. 1 private sector landlord or housing developer, which is what Mike is indicating. 1 renter of affordable housing, which we do have a candidate who's in that population, and then other members, obviously. So
It's just I would hate to tie our hands for a whole year in case someone did. So I hate to leave talent on the people enthusiasm and talent waiting as well. But 8 might be a good thing to shoot for. And
well, so I mean, there's just looking. I mean, there's at least 3 kind of targeted categories that we haven't hit at all. And I do think that especially having a planning commission member would be really important to round out that committee. So would that
there were a lot. They could spin a lot without having that direction. Though they'll have Melinda, right?
Yep, Melinda Scott will provide staff support for the committee.
Okay.
And I know process-wise, we opened this up for everyone in the community. We didn't approach the planning commission specifically at this point. How we've handled this in the past with committees, if the select board wants, that representation from another body. If you decide you want to reserve a slot for a planning commission member, no one's kind of raised their hand at this point. Typically, those would go to the commission, and then the commission would have that discussion among itself and hopefully find someone who'd be willing to serve in that role.
That might be a good idea. Let the planning commission basically pick somebody.
Yeah, you could say you've designated a slot for a planning commissioner and let us know who.
Yep.
Okay.
The town currently only has 2 vacancies on the town boards.
So would we do 7 then?
7.
And then leave 1 for planning commission and leave 1 for a developer or
A developer or a housing authority kind of
Yeah.
person. I mean, there are certainly people who have
there are some
touch points with them,
yeah.
but they don't.
There are certain builders that, can't think of the word here, but their target renters are people, Section 8. They rent a lot of Section 8s.
Maybe I don't know what the next step is, but let's say 7, and if we get really stuck, we can go to 8. But I like 7, designate
Yeah.
1 for planning commission, 1 for
Yep.
some of the missing.
And 7 is enough to get the board up and running
Up and
too.
running,
So
right, that's true.
we don't
Yeah.
have to
wait, right?
wait for that. They can start.
That's a really good point, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. The only bad thing is that we'd have to make choices. Because these are all great. I was really impressed with every single one. So if we are with a consensus that we're going to appoint 7 tonight, Terry, would you be able to
I just
serve?
happen to have a chart. It has all 10 people on it and all 5 of us. So if we vote for our top 7, we can total them up and see who are the victors on that. And if you would, when you call out their names, if you use their last names, that would be helpful to me. That's.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to
You
take,
had me up until then.
I'm going to take a moment of silence to look over that thing.
No, I know.
Yeah, get the cone of silence on, okay?
I'm ready when you're ready.
Okay.
Want me to go?
Sure.
Fuller?
You're starting out?
I'm going.
Okay.
Fuller?
Pardon me?
Fuller. Bruce Fuller.
Yep.
Charlie McGill.
Yep.
Debbie Ingram.
Yep.
Marla McQuiston.
Marla, yes.
Monica Rivero.
Monica,
Yep.
yep.
Scott Rogers. And Scott Stevens.
Scott Stevens, okay. All right.
Okay.
I got Debbie Ingram, Charlie McGill,
Hold on a second. Yep.
Lisa.
Lisa Braden,
Yes, sorry, I didn't write the last name down. All Bruce,
Bruce Fuller,
Yep.
Scott Stevens,
Scott Stevens, yep.
Scott Rogers,
Yep.
and Mike Lucy.
Which one?
Mike Lucy? Is it Lucy?
Lucy, Lucy. 3, 1, 2, it's only 6. You don't have to vote for another one, but
Oh,
I have it.
I had Debbie, Charlie, Lisa, Bruce, Scott, and Mike. That's 7.
So I got Bruce Fuller, Debbie Ingram, Michael Lucy, Charlie McGill, Scott Rogers, and Scott Stevens. Who was the other one?
Mike.
Like Lucy.
Mike,
Lucy?
Mike Lucy.
Oh, I got it. Lisa, yep, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lisa.
so-
Ready?
All right, I have Fuller,
Okay,
Rogers,
Scott Rogers, yep,
Scott Rogers, yeah. Charlie McGill,
yep,
Debbie Ingram,
yep.
Lisa Braden Harder, Marla McQuiston, and Monica Rivero.
I love it how we're all a little similar and different.
Good.
I have Bruce Fuller, Charlie McGill,
Yep,
Debbie Ingram,
yep.
Lisa Braden Harder, Ready?
That's 4.
Oh, yeah, Marla McQuiston, Monica Rivero, Scott Stevens.
Okay, and I had Lisa Braden Harder, Debbie Ingram, Michael Lucy, Charlie McGill, Marla McQuiston, Monica Rivero. That's 6, and Scott Rogers, 2, 3, 6, 7. Okay, so we have 4. So we have eliminated Michael Lucy and Scott Stevens. Everybody else has either 5 or 4 votes.
About Todd Cook.
So we have elected
Wait, Todd Cook is,
Lisa Braden Harder with 4, Bruce Fuller with 4, Deb Ingram with 5, Charlie McGill with 5, Marla McQuiston with 4, Monica Rivero with 4, and Scott Rogers with 4.
How many did Todd Cook get?
Amazing, nobody got 3.
Todd?
Yeah.
Did you had a question or about?
I thought you said we only eliminated 2, but we eliminated Todd Cook as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So, with that being set, I don't know that we need formal action on it, but maybe we do to ask the planning commission to appoint a member.
Yep. Yeah, formal action, or I could transmit a memo to the planning staff that the select board would like.
Technically, we'd have to get them to recommend, not really appoint. And then
Does that mean the planning commission will pick one of
their own?
that are not on this list?
Yeah, well, none of these people are on the planning commission. So, yeah.
Lisa was on the DRB.
And then recruiting other.
Maybe could Melinda maybe look into reaching out to some partner agencies? She's going to be the representative for that.
And I was reviewing the charge, and I don't think it's necessarily limited to Williston residents to serve in the committee.
Williston residents was like, we'd like to have Williston. It's like a maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it certainly broadens that regional scope to try to find one of those agency partners.
So just in order to make a motion.
Yeah.
So, not which Scott did we? Both Scotts or one Scott?
Why don't you read who won again? So we can.
Yeah.
Scott Rogers was the winner.
Scott Rogers. Okay. So Scott Rogers and then Bruce Fuller or no?
Yes.
Okay. Bruce Fuller.
Yes.
Okay.
Is on.
Bruce Fuller's on. Yeah. Okay. Bruce Fuller. Okay. All right. That's okay. I'll make a motion, but I'm gonna make 2 for the 1 year, 3 for 2 years, and 2 for
That
3
sounds
years.
great.
Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm going to move to appoint Charlie McGill and Debbie Ingram to the Housing Committee for an unexpired 3-year term through June 30th, 2024. I'll also move to appoint Lisa Braden Harder, Marla McQuiston, and Scott Rogers to the Housing Committee for an unexpired 3-year term through June 30th, 2025. And I'll also move to appoint Scott Rogers and Bruce Fuller to the Housing Committee for an unexpired 3-year term through June 30th, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion on the motion?
Please, God, no.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Greta, that was a great question, by the way. Thank you for coming up with that.
Yep.
I think that's the way we should
Who was
do
the
these.
third person or the second group? I had Braden Harder McQuestion.
Monica?
Oh, I did Scott Rogers
I
twice.
thought I might have heard
Yeah,
Rogers
I did
twice.
Rogers twice.
Oh.
Oh,
Yep, I did Rogers twice. It's Monica Rivero would be,
2-year term.
yeah, 2-year term. Monica Rivero.
Expiring in
Yeah.
FY25.
Yep,
Okay.
Monica Rivero.
Okay. It's late. I thought I heard Rogers twice.
It's an
There's R's and,
That's an administrative correction.
yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay.
All right. Very good.
Okay. Give you a chance to finish writing, Eric, and then manager's report.
Get it. I'll be brief. It's late.
Okay.
Exit 12 Park and Ride. They have all their permits from the town. We're just waiting word when they're going to open and when GMT bus service will also be starting there. Trying to see if we can do some kind of event, ribbon cutting or something like that. It's been over 20 years in the making, so I think it's a good idea to do something. If we can.
Definitely invite Jeff.
We're chatting. Maybe Jeff Beers can.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Ceremonial first car that parks.
Considering this is originally was thought of maybe even going behind Skateland. So it's been a while.
A long time.
Yeah. Our town manager doesn't even know what Skateland was.
I've heard stories.
Yeah, I went. I rented skates. I hated it skate.
So that if you haven't been by there, the site looks good in my opinion, and the planning department agrees to give them the permit. So it looks good. Our paving program is up and running. Oak Hill Road's complete. North Williston Road is complete. A couple other roads surround out this year's paving. So the board knows planning staff's going to hold a public information session on the proposed inclusionary zoning and other bylaw amendments coming up later in October. They're going to hold that Thursday, October 12th here from 6 to 8. We'll record it. Matt and I are going to tape a What's Up Williston show tomorrow at noontime that we can also share with that. New fall season kicking off. So trying to think of different ways to get the information out so we have well-informed residents leading up to the public hearing and some other outreach as well. So folks can't make it, we'll hopefully have it taped and reach out to the planning office. That's coming up on October the 17th during your meeting. The Community Center and Library Assessment Steering Committee report is nearing completion. I'm working to come up with an evening for a special select board meeting to have that presentation to this board, along with the library trustees, the steering committee, and members of the community. Chatted with Ted, and we think it would be good to hold that at Williston Central School Auditorium. I got dates from them first, ran it by the library trustees, ran it by the consultant. Come to you tonight that probably some dates to think about are October 30th, November 6th, and November the 1st. I'll send you an email tomorrow if you would mind checking your calendars this week and letting me know your availability. I'd like to find a night all 5 board members are available for a special meeting there.
Is that going to be a regular Tuesday night meeting or is it a special meeting?
It would be a special meeting in addition to the regular meeting scheduled.
Because I usually take the first week of November off every year.
Okay. Yeah, the 30th, that's a week that doesn't have any meetings scheduled right now. And the 1st is also starts in October and ends in November. So I'll send these around and we'll find a date that works for everybody.
Don't get away very often. That's the only week of the whole year.
Yep.
Also be trying to find a date for your retreat coming up as well. Just working on just some logistics for that meeting. Then a reminder, next 2 meetings like tonight, we'll have facility tours. Next will be at the Public Works facility. I'll send out the address so everyone's aware of where that is. We'll start at 5:30, try to do an hour or so to allow time to travel back here and then have the meeting start. And then fire station on October the 17th. That's all I have to say.
Questions for Eric? Other business?
2 catering permits this evening. The first is an Oktoberfest event at Goodwater Brewing off Marshall Avenue. Staff's reviewed this. It's also going to need a temporary event permit. So this is a brewery. We haven't had any issues with this facility. Staff's suggestion is for the board to consider approval pending approval of a temporary event permit by staff. And the date of that is October the 7th, the Saturday in the afternoon.
Questions? Motion?
Move for approval.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The
I
ayes.
just really wanted to vote.
And finally, you may recall you approved a cyclocross event at Catamount Community Forest. It's going to be taking place on September the 30th. They're looking to have alcohol service there through a caterer. They've done this the last couple of years. In their site plan, they have a designated area where it would be roped off and following all rules for consumption. They've identified a caterer. It's the Pinery, it's called, on Pine Street. I know they've done the truck stop. I forgot its new name this year, but attended that a couple times, and I know I saw they did a good service, just for personal perspective here. I chatted with the event organizer, reiterated that need to follow the site plan and make sure it's contained. And Select Board has discretion under our local alcohol ordinance to allow things like this on town property at your discretion for a catering permit.
Questions?
I'm sorry, I don't remember what the event was called.
It's a cyclocross. It's at Catamount. It's kind of all-terrain bike race on the south side of the town forest.
And there was no, from the previous year's events, when they've had the alcohol sales, there's been no incidents.
Nope.
So.
Nope, nothing reported. So we know it's been, I think, mainly people who may have a beverage while watching the race.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Is that it for other business?
Yep, no other business.
Okay. Final thoughts on agenda items from this meeting. Are there any follow-up thoughts or requests?
Eric, do you email everybody and let them know if they're now on the committee or not, or how does that work?
Yep. Typically, Erin Dickinson did a great job coordinating all these folks to try to see if we could find a night here that worked for everybody too. What we do is we do appointment letters for everyone who's appointed, then folks who aren't appointed, we follow up with an email as well. And I usually pass on sentiments from the board. I get the sense, all were strong applicants, but we've had many could only pick a limited amount and encourage them to stay updated with other opportunities in the future to reapply for other positions.
Great.
Hearing no other final thoughts, I declare that we are adjourned.
All right.